Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating man. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
I love the intro. Hello, my name is Bonny. I'm a recovering entrepreneur and startup coach. I live in Sydney, Australia. By now, you might guess my accent. I used to be German, but I'm better now. I moved to Australia in 1996 with my just beginning family. My kids have two sons. They are now 22 and 27. And in 2016-17, I moved to New York. I lived in Manhattan for about 6 years. I'm growing my last startup over there. I subsequently sold it and moved back to Australia. I used to live on the Sunshine Coast, Australia. Anybody who is from Australia, you will know Noosa. But when I came back from New York, I thought I liked the big city life. So I moved to Sydney. And I've just heard that Gertrude is from Melbourne, which has just been voted the best city in the world. So congratulations. So my story. Well, I have lived a lot of lives, I guess. I started my career as a shop window dresser in Hamburg, Germany. From there, I went and became a stage designer for movies and TV shows. And when I traveled the world many times, I think 3 years all up, largely in Southeast Asia and Australia. And when I first put foot on Australia's soil, I immediately fell in love with Australia. I don't know. I think it was the magpie that sound and the clean air and the people and everything was just so nice. And I decided there and then, 10 minutes into my first visit to Australia, that I want to move here one day. So many years later, many travels later, my wife and my newborn son, we boarded a plane and we moved to the Sunshine Coast, Australia. Over here, of course, there were very little stage design opportunities, especially on the Sunshine Coast. There was some stuff going on in Sydney. So I started a web design company. I went out and I got myself my first client, a development company on the Sunshine Coast. And I sold them a website package. And then I went home and sat down and tried to figure out how to do website. And well, a few years later, I had 16 employees and international clients and so on and so on. And basically bought my first house with that company. And from the web design, I came across a lot of interesting ideas. And it was around the 2000s, the .com, just before the .com bubble, and started several startups. as early as 2001. Some successful, some not. So I have all the battle scars from being an entrepreneur. And in my last startup, living in Manhattan, and first lived in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and was in several accelerators, I was sort of the oldest in the room. And, on a Friday afternoon, when everybody sat down and have a bottle of beer and let their hair down, everybody was just like this shining example of success all week. But then, 10 minutes into just deflating at the end of the week, you pull the curtain back and every single kitchen was on fire. Nobody did well. There was a lot of mental health problems. I had a burnout and subsequently depression in around 2004 after one of my startup failed. And I learned a lot about my own toxic masculinity, try to soldier on, not sharing, not talking about it, trying too hard, basically. And I burned out, and that started my journey into mental health, into meditation, therapy, and all the little tools to stay sane in this journey. And today I'm a coach. I coach global startups from the West Coast, East Coast USA, Europe, from the very north, from Helsinki, all the way down to Prague, Singapore, Bangkok, and Australia, of course. So, and my focus is on mental health, of not only give startups the tools to go from idea to product market fit with all the strategies and tactics involved, but also to stay sane as a human being and maintain healthy relationships. Because when you suffer, people around you suffer as well. And then you carry that into the team, and the team carries it into your business. And I always say that nothing fucks up your startup quicker than running out of happiness. So that is my focus with the work I'm doing with startup founders, and it's deeply fulfilling for me. I found my ikigai. Ikigai being the Japanese principle of the Venn diagram with 4 circles. What makes you happy? What are you good at? What change do you want to see in the world? And what does abundance mean to you? And I think I've finally, in my old age, found that, and coaching is that for me. I really enjoy working with intelligent, creative, and ambitious people around the world. I meet incredible people. And I think one of the defining factors for me to select my clients is that they have a desire to grow as a human being and see the world from different angles and see themselves under a critical magnifying glass and try to grow, try to shed some unhelpful behaviors that they collected over time, and be a better human being to themselves, to the people they love, to their team, and to their business. So that's really where my focus is. So 7 minutes, 35 seconds in, there's a lot more I can talk about, obviously. I think the most interesting part, there's 2 things that I'm really, really proud of, is 3 things actually. First is being a father and having 2 healthy, beautiful sons that are incredible partners to their wives and girlfriends. So real men, as I call them. Then I had a life-changing experience in a 10-day meditation retreat that sort of changed my trajectory as a human. And interesting fact, I lived in the rainforest without a house for 3.5 years, so I'm a total hippie as well.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. That's an interesting and fascinating story. So, in your experience, how does having a diverse team impact achieving product market fit, especially in the early stages of a startup?
That's a really super question. We both live in Australia, and when you go outside and you look around, everybody comes from somewhere, everybody has an accent, everybody is celebrated in their own way from their cultural heritage. So just us in this room, I believe you come from Africa, and I mean the music and the decoration and your clothing and everything. I'm German. Like my background is actually Viking, as weird as that sounds. So I did the genetic thing, and so everybody comes from some. So it is pretty obvious when you think about it that whatever product you have, the customers will be very diverse, right? And if I don't include that fact into my product market fit testing, then I make a massive mistake. So, I mean, quite obviously, I'm that privileged white straight male, middle-aged guy that you see in a lot of boardrooms around the world. So there's still very little diversity, especially in the decision-making level of companies. But I see that diversity plays a role more and more and more. And interestingly, the thin edge of the wedge was that it's better for business. It is just simply better for business to recognize diversity in your product market fit approach, because my assumptions about how the world works is so different from how the world actually works for other people. So, and if you don't have a diverse team, then there's no chance to actually. I can't put myself into your shoes. I have no idea. I'm not female. I don't have that cultural background. I don't understand these things. So I need somebody on the team that understands what it feels like to be a woman, what it feels like to be from China, what it feels like to be in a wheelchair, whatever, from different. Have different gender identities, different sexualities. All of these things need to be present in the team.
Yeah.
Obviously, startups, they don't have 500 people sitting around, so you can't have, but you do need to start very early in your hiring and co-founder process to address that diversity. Does that answer your question?
It does. So, considering your focus on mental health in the startup world,
Yeah.
can you discuss the unique mental health challenges faced by founders from diverse backgrounds?
Well, the simple answer is no, because again, I'm the privileged straight white male type, and there's a lot of. I haven't really struggled in my life. I mean, like, apart from having a German background, some nations have an allergic reaction to that accent, understandably, with our history. But other than that, I really have to rely on other people to help me with that. So what I do, the only thing that I can do and that I do is listening. Just like, tell me your story, what's happening, and I'm unpacking more and more and more and more things that I just had no clue about. So I'm coaching a Black female founder in Brooklyn, New York, and when the George Floyd murder happened, we started a still ongoing discussion on privilege and racism and things like that. And that was such an eye-opener for me, because I never considered myself being racist. And then I go like, well, there are things that I don't even think about, that, there are natural reactions that have been, put into me through my society, my environment. And I had blind spots in that. So it's very important to just listen, just like, hey, what does this mean? As little as, like when you can customize your thumbs up in Slack or in Instagram, and it's either yellow or brown or white or whatever. Like, what are the rules around? Like, how do you feel about me having a white thumb? Does it mean that I'm a white supremacist, or do I just realistically represent my color? So little things like that can really trip up people that come from a traumatic background.
Yeah.
So listening, asking questions, and just shut up. That's sort of what I'm trying to do, and every time I learn something new.
So, from your perspective as an angel investor, how does diversity among startup founders influence fundraising strategies and outcomes?
That's also very good questions, and I come across that a fair bit. I mean, there has been huge progress in terms of equity and inclusion and diversity for female founders. We're still not there, but that was a starting point with the Me Too movement that became like a really big thing. And that's sort of the blueprint, I believe. Just female founders. Can you repeat the question?
So, from your perspective as an angel investor, how does diversity among startup founders influence fundraising strategies and outcomes? And this
Okay,
is
cool.
a very personal one for me, because I have just launched my first tech startup. I am Zimbabwean, I'm African, I'm female, I'm 56, so I'm facing ageism, and I'm in technology. And I have pitched to over 200 events. I have a brilliant idea, it's income generating, but very, very frustrating to get any investors enrolled. So this is why I wanted to raise this question.
Right. Okay, it's very personal for you, and I can understand that. And I do come across that bias a lot. And yes, so I think at the very beginning, we have to ground all of our decisions in reality. Wishful thinking doesn't help us at all. As much as I would wish the world to be more diverse and more understanding and open and more advanced in thinking around these things, the world is not. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of blind spots where people think they're just all peachy, but they're not. They have sort of preconceived opinions about certain things, right? And so as a founder from a diverse background, I have a session with them and explore what they believe the world, or how they appear in the world, how other people perceive them. And just unpack, like, what's the reality? As frustrating as it might be, as unfair as it might be, it's a horrible thing, but let's just see what is the reality of the situation. And then I often find a bit of a disconnect between what I'm seeing around me from a white male perspective, and what the founder perceives. And I often come over some level of trauma because you struggled. There must have been, or there usually were, some horrible experiences, and there are scars and there are defense mechanisms. And one of the things that I found somewhat helpful in that process is that I can never understand or empathize what it feels like for you to go into the room and pitch, because that's not an experience I will ever have. So I can sympathize with you, and I can share my white male privilege with you in a way. So I can say, like, hey, when I go into this boardroom, even if I'm late, when I'm late, I don't apologize. I say, hey, thanks for your patience. Let's begin. And I expect to win, because that is ingrained. I go in there, I know my stuff, I have a good idea, I have a good product. I expect to win. And I found that with founders from a diverse background who had a lot of struggle in their life, they enter the room with their fist up. They're ready to fight.
Yeah.
And when you have your fists up, the energy you bring in the room is just different. So I did a test with one Black female founder for a very, very important meeting. And I said, I cannot really change your past. I cannot really change how you feel. I cannot heal your trauma. I'm not a therapist. But what I can do, let's just play theater. Let's just say the meeting is in 2 months. Let's just practice walking in the room as if you were me and act as you as a privileged person. Just act like it, even if you don't feel, even if so we practice and practice and practice body language, the way you approach questions and so on.
Yes.
So she walked in there and it was a little theater play. She was very nervous, but because she wasn't emotionally there, but she could act it. And she came out of that meeting, said, Bonnie, that was freaking amazing. Like they listened to me, they wanted to hear that we finish. And it was really interesting. And it was just shifting the energy in the room to, I'm going in there to win. I don't have to fight. Everybody loves me. And I'm not sure if that helps across the board, but it's like it's little things sometimes that can make a difference. Again, I cannot tell you whether that is it. That was an experiment. It worked with her. And I'm not saying that everybody from a diverse background has their fists up. Of course not. But 80% of our reactions are based on our trauma, not on what's good for us. And, we feel when we get emotional, when we get triggered. I get triggered for things as well on different levels. And I just don't react in a way that's healthy. And that's something that we can change. We can't change the world, but we can sort of train and work on how we react to certain things, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It reminds me, I lived in apartheid South Africa. So I've experienced racism at its worst most of my life. I lived in apartheid Rhodesia before we had independence. So I know racism. I can smell it coming in through the door. But I changed my mindset and decided to give people an opportunity to show up for who they are. So I have developed a muscle, if you like, that doesn't jump into judging what somebody's saying. And even when I moved to Australia 2.5 years ago, people said to me, why are you going to Australia from New Zealand? They're racist. And I'll be honest with you, I've experienced it, but I choose not to see it. So I love what you've said. It's a really good skill for any person of color to have.
Yes.
Because you do walk into the room with the chip on your shoulder. All of the experiences you've had dictate how you're perceiving things. Yes. So thank you for reminding me of that. That's a very, very powerful lesson. So what is your investment thesis? What kind of businesses, founders do you invest in?
I don't have an investment thesis. I would say at the core, I do not invest in companies that where I don't coach the founders.
Right.
So that gives me an opportunity to intimately understand not only the business, but also how the founders tick. I've never come across anybody from any background that doesn't have some sort of trauma in some direction. So for me, I have abandonment issues. I'm a people pleaser. Subsequently, I come from a Protestant blue-collar family. Money is evil. So I have all these things. And I had a good life, but I have these things that I carry in it. And I was always going against this ceiling of not becoming wealthier. And then I realized one day that it was hammered into me, like every traffic light, my father would point out, oh, look at the guys over there in the Mercedes. They're so miserable, and like, oh, look at this rich asshole. And so I was didn't want to become that. I wanted to be the underdog forever. And I had to sort of work on that limiting belief from there are things that we carry around and that we react to and that we do, we're not even aware of it.
Yeah.
So, and you need another person to unpack that. So I always say every coach needs a coach. So I have a network of other coaches that sort of point out the stuff in me that I just don't see it because it's
Yeah.
me. I'm too
And
close
those
to
are
it.
those blind spots you were talking about, right? We all have
One,
them. We all have them.
100%. 100%. I mean, there's one little exercise that I found so interesting. It's whatever grinds my gears in other people,
Yes.
that is a great opportunity to look into whether I am that person. So my little example is I'm getting so frustrated and angry when I'm in a restaurant and it's nice and quiet, and somewhere on the neighboring table somebody is really loud, booming voice, so like the cliche American tourist sort of thing, like really and I'm like, oh, they're so annoying. And then I told my friend, I'm like, they said, Bonnie, that's you in every room. You're always the loud one. And I'm like, shit, I didn't know that. So like that was my blind spot. So whatever
Yes.
grinds our gears is an opportunity to see if our subconsciousness is trying to tell us something. Hey,
Something
that's
else.
you. You don't like that because you don't like that about yourself. No, not always, obviously, but that's a good starting point.
Oh, I love that. That is so true. We need to know what our blind spots are. So, in your opinion, how does diversity within a startup team fuel innovation and creativity, particularly in the pre product market fit phase?
Mm. All right. So between idea and product market fit, that's sort of my sweet spot. That's where all the crazy stuff happens, right?
Right.
Once you have product market fit and you're scaling, you become an operational CEO. It's, you live from quarter to quarter. You look at spreadsheets and projections a lot, and I find that very boring. But that first phase, that 1 to 3 years of throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks and making big assumptions and changes, that's the interesting part. That's I find that really fascinating and a lot of fun. And because you have to make such massive assumptions and changes, you try all sorts of things. The more diverse the team is, the more things you can throw at the wall. So you can try, like, the ideas pop to the surface that, wow, I had no idea about this, like,
Yes.
this is interesting, and that might just be it. So you just have more things in the mix, to try out. Yeah.
I love that.
I'm a seasoned UX UI designer. My background is product, and I'm quite good at this. And almost every single time, my first assumptions about a solution for a problem is wrong. And more often
Okay.
than not, the answer comes from a diverse team member.
Okay. People think differently. So, how do
Mm.
you measure the impact of diversity on a startup success? Are there specific indicators or metrics that you focus on?
Oh, well, I'm not really an enterprise guy. There are diversity and success measures and KPIs for large businesses. Some of them are real, some of them are lip service, and that's not really my area of expertise. For a
Mhm.
startup, it's really about company culture. How do we get along? How do we get along when things are stressful, even more
Yes.
importantly? And are we hitting our milestones? Are we growing? That's really all the only meaningful measurement for a startup is how far are we moving, and how resourceful are we spending our money, spending as little money and testing as fast as possible towards product market fit. And
Yes.
I don't have any specific diversity and inclusion things, but I do notice that some ideas, some ways of crafting something, of wording something, on solving a certain problem, when it comes from a diversity root cause, like if it not only from a diverse background person, but generally it looks at the problem from a totally different vantage point, and suddenly you see something that And I recognize that. So I would, it's more anecdotal and individual. Like, you know what? This thing that Sue did last week, that was genius. Like nobody else on the team saw that, but because she is, she is transgender, no, not transgender. She is from a different sexuality background. Maybe she is bi or lesbian. She saw that, or they are transgender and they see something that I just don't see. And boom, this idea comes up. It turns into a hypothesis. We test the hypothesis, and wow, it worked. And then criticize team members in private, but praise them in public. So that's always a reason for celebration.
That is fantastic and a beautiful way to end our segment. Bonny, I could talk to you forever. It's a pity we only had 30 minutes. Thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your skills, and sharing today on this platform. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. It was fun.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. A lot of my community are women who have startups, who are facing the same struggles that I'm facing. I'm bringing you voices of investors, people who are in the industry, in the business, giving you knowledge and advice. And I think I took away one real gem in remembering to leave your baggage at the door when you go and pitch. Go in as if you are a winner, because you are. So I'll be back again with you tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Bonny, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you very much for your time, and anybody and everybody who is dialing in, feel free to reach out to me. There's only one Bonny Morlock on the planet, so if you Google that, you find me. Feel free. I'm always happy to help and listen, and if I have some advice, to share that. I'm a pay forward person.
Thank you, Bonny. I'm definitely going to send you my pitch, and hopefully I'll catch up with you on Zoom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Yeah, bye.
That's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay connected.